Start. Okay. Okay. Already like 6 people. Okay.
Yes, I can.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the annual Scorekeeper and Statistics training. I think those of you who have already done this training in years past know me. I'm Devin Martin. I'm with South Mountain Lacrosse and also the Arizona Girls Lacrosse officials, where we do all the training for the youth lacrosse officials, who are mostly our high school players. Um, the training for tonight. We're going to stick with the national standards and then focus a little bit on some of the things the Arizona League does. So for girls lacrosse all the way around the country, um, the youth through U14 level play the USA Lacrosse rulebook. And at the high school level, it's a combined USA Lacrosse NFHS high school rulebook. Those are new every year, and the 2026 rule book is now out. It went into print about a month and a half ago, something like that. So if you don't already have a rule book, you can get one. But that's what high school girls lacrosse, that's the rule book for girls lacrosse around the country. And then different leagues or states around the country sometimes manage things differently, like um, administration of issues with players or teams, things like that. And so we'll kind of talk about some of what Arizona does that may or may not match other states. So if we do later get anyone watching this on YouTube from another state, they'll know it doesn't apply to them. But most of this will apply anywhere across the country. So we'll go ahead and get started. If you have questions, just put them in the chat. Chris is monitoring those on another computer and he'll yell and let me know if there are questions. Um, so we'll just go from there. Okay. Um, so for 2026, we have some new points of emphasis with USA Lacrosse NFHS. And so at the high school level, it's identifying and managing fouls during scoring plays. So those are a lot of the things we're used to, like shooting space, 3 seconds, all that kind of stuff that gets called often. But this also includes offensive fouls like charging, forcing through, illegal cradle. So the focus is to really look at all those fouls that happen during scoring plays to make sure we're appropriately recognizing and calling either the offense or the defense, whoever's committing the foul. Another point of emphasis is efficient draw administration. So we want to make sure teams are substituting quickly and not taking a lot of time between a goal and a draw to try and coach rather than getting the kids right back on the field ready for the next play. So the goal is to make sure there's good flow in the game, and that the pace of play remains quick. Stick exchanges, we're also looking to make sure those are done quickly. So if players use a draw stick for the draw and another stick on the field, they need to swap those out quickly and get to the draw on time. Um, Ball return, so we want to make sure that the goalies are pretty quickly getting the ball back to the officials so we can set up the draw, those kinds of things. And then the draw setup itself. The goal is to do that more quickly. So in years past, if you've been at some of the games, you might have noticed sometimes the officials are setting up the draw and then going back in and kind of resetting up the draw and resetting up the draw. So that the goal is for that to not happen anymore. We're going to go in, we're going to set up the draw. If players keep shifting their sticks a little bit while we're trying to set up the draw, we're going to just stop and the ball will go to the other team. So the centers need to be really quick about getting back to the draw circle, setting up for the draw, and if the official has moved their stick and told them to hold it there, they can't keep jiggling it around, that kind of thing. So that's what that efficient draw setup means. And then just like last year, delay of game and use of the green card, that's a point of emphasis as well, and we'll kind of talk later in the presentation about how that'll look. And then a few rule changes this year. Stick check request change. So the rule book has now clarified more opportunities for when a coach may request a stick check. And if there are coaches on the call, please remember stick checks must be requested by number. So you can't ask the officials to check Sally's stick. You have to ask the officials to check number 10 White's stick or whatever she is. Um, we're not operating by names on the field. Everyone's a team and a number. So you can do the color of the team name and the number, but we don't do stick checks by name because the officials may or may not know players' names. So stick checks are always done by number. So just remember that. So they've clarified no on-field player may wear an audio or video device during the game at all. There is an exception, and that is if we do have a player in the league who is hearing impaired and has, a physician or audiologist prescribed device, hearing aid device, that's different. Those are allowed because it's not considered audio equipment, it's considered a medical device. So if any of your teams have a player who has that type of device, they just need to make sure when they go through stick check and the officials are looking that the officials know that they have a prescribed medical device and it's not some sort of audio or video device. So the medical devices are allowed. But other than that, no audio or video. Uh, Possession timeout has changed in years past. If the goalie had the ball in the goal circle and her team called a timeout, we would resume play with the goalie with the ball in her goal circle and whatever goal count we were at. So if we'd used 3 of the 10 seconds, that's where we start. Um, This year it'll be a little bit different. If a team calls a timeout when the goalie's in possession of the ball in her goal circle, play is going to restart at the dot. And any player from the goalie's team may restart play at the dot. Because there was a timeout, it would be a whistle start as always, but that's a little bit different now. So we won't go back to the goal circle. We're going to go to the dot. Illegal draw. In the past, if there was an illegal draw, the girl who took the draw from the non-offending team had to pick up the ball to restart play. Now, if there's an illegal draw, any player from the opposing team of the girl who committed the foul can just restart play at the spot of the ball. So anyone on that team who wants to take the ball can just run, pick it up, and go. So that's a new one. Goal circle fouls. In the past, when there was a goal circle foul, the player who committed the penalty had to go 4 meters behind the goal circle. And what USA Lacrosse has found was it wasted a lot of time because kids got confused. How far behind the goal circle, because there's the goal with the goalie and there's the circle. How far exactly is 4 meters from there? Can she just be behind the goal, or does she have to be exactly behind where the goalie was? And it would take forever for kids to get where they were supposed to be, and it was just wasting a lot of time. So the new rule is the offending player just has to move 4 meters away. So they no longer have to go behind the goalie, but they have to move the full 4 meters away to give the goalie the opportunity to clear the ball. So roughly somewhere in the middle of the 8 is where that player needs to go if they've committed the foul. Um, so when we get to our games, what do we need for the table if we're the home team? If we're the home team, we need to have some sort of scorekeeper's table on the field, and we need chairs. And those will be set up right at the midfield. I'll show you a field map in a little bit so you can kind of see where everything goes. There needs to be some sort of scoreboard. It can be an electronic scoreboard. It can be a flip scoreboard. It just needs to be some sort of visible scoreboard. If you're playing on a high school field that has a huge elevated scoreboard, those are fine too. But just some sort of scoreboard. We need to have a clock. And so someone's got to be keeping track of the time. For some teams, if we've got the big scoreboard in a stadium, the clock is built in. Other teams have electronic scoreboards at their table with a clock built in. That's fine. In some cases, we have teams where they either don't have something like that or they do, but the battery died. And so we've got a parent using an iPhone at the table to keep track of time. That's fine too. But we do have to have some sort of clock that keeps track of the time. There should be a horn. In many cases, the horn is attached to either the big scoreboard in a stadium or some sort of electronic scoreboard at a table. If you don't have something like that, just the little boat horns are fine. Anything like that works, but there needs to be something like that available for the scorekeeper's table. I would recommend, even if you have a electronic scoreboard that has a horn built in or the stadium scoreboard, that the tables still have a separate horn, because if we have coaches calling for a timeout, for example, and the officials on the field are quite a distance away and can't hear them, the table personnel can do a quick double tap of that horn to let the officials know a coach has called timeout. And if you don't have something like that, then the coaches and the table are all trying to yell to the officials, timeout, timeout. And if we're very far away, it might take us a minute before we hear you. So it's a good idea to have that horn to just do the quick double tap to let us know someone's calling a timeout, just in case. So I would recommend that. It's not required if you have some other horn, but it's still probably a good idea to have something like that. There should be some sort of alternate possession indicator. A lot of the scoreboards have them built in. If they don't, it's not a big deal. The officials will work with you to figure out what you want to use as an alternate possession indicator. A lot of teams will just put an extra cone, for example, on the score table, and we'll just move it from side to side as alternate possession changes, and that's fine. Some people will just use a scorekeeper's water bottle and move it back and forth side to side. Any of those kinds of things are fine, but we just have to have something that the table and the officials agree will be the alternate possession indicator so we know if we have alternate possession who's getting the ball. Um, if we use alternate possession during the game, we'll tell you to switch the indicator so you'll know when to move it. We won't leave you guessing. The officials on the field will make sure you know. The home team should also have health and safety sheets for their team. So we hope we never need them, but you have to have them just in case. So if someone does get hurt at a game, um, and we have to call EMTs, paramedics, that kind of thing, we'll know if the child is allergic to something, if a parent says they. Yep. Okay. For some reason, it popped up saying I had just been muted and now I'm unmuted, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Um, so yeah, make sure you have the health and safety sheets for your team just in case. You should have roster sheets, so your own team's roster. Everyone should have those. Just make sure you have a copy for your own table personnel, but have an extra copy for the opposing team and the officials if they need it. Because the officials can ask for your roster 10 minutes before a game. So just in case we need it, if there's any kind of question or concern, we can look at your roster and make sure everyone's on it.
Hey,
Um,
Devin, there's a question in the chat
okay.
asking where they get the health and safety sheets.
So every team kind of has their own, and each team has a board or school officials that kind of manage that. So for everyone, it'll be a little bit different. Um, if you're not sure where your team has those, um, talk to your coach or a parent board member. They'll usually know where they are. If there are any teams that cannot find a health and safety sheet, I can give you like a sample copy that other teams have used in the past that you can kind of modify. But they look a lot like school permission forms. It's basically the parents sign off saying, if my kid gets hurt and you can't reach me, it's okay to give them Tylenol. It's okay to send them with the paramedics, that kind of thing. But every team should have them already from years past. And then you just have the players fill them out again every year. Um, so health and safety sheets, roster sheets. The home team should have a scorekeeper, a timekeeper. A spotter is optional, but it's highly recommended because it's really hard if you're the scorekeeper to watch the field, see everything that's happening, and correctly mark it all. Where if you have a spotter helping you and there's the two of you watching and marking, it's a whole lot easier. So I recommend a spotter, but it's not required. But the home team does have to have a scorekeeper and a timekeeper because those are the official scorekeeper and timekeeper for the game. Um, it's each team should have at their home games a sideline or field marshal. Um, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's hard to get a parent to volunteer. As best you can, try to get a parent or two to volunteer for each of your home games to manage that. Um, most of the time, we don't have problems, but occasionally we have an unruly fan, or it's happened once or twice. The boys lacrosse team shows up to support the girls team, and boys, teenage boys don't always make the best decisions, and sometimes they get a little mouthy, um, and say things to the opposing team that they shouldn't, say things to the officials that they shouldn't. And it's easier for the team if there's a sideline or field marshal that can stop that behavior quickly and identify the problems. Because if those kinds of things go on and There's no sideline or field marshal to help address it. The officials have to stop the game. We have to send the coaches over. And oftentimes, because the coaches are at the opposite end of the field, they don't know who the problem people are. So they've got to go over and tell everyone to behave and then go all the way back to the coach's side of the field. And then if the behavior continues, we have to card the head coach. And we really don't want to card the head coach because someone can't behave on the other side of the field. We do it if we have to, but we really like to not have to do that. So it helps to have a sideline or field marshal that can just go over and, for example, tell the boys, knock it off. And
Devin, a
say,
question came in on if
uh-huh.
the sideline personnel requirements are the same for JV games as varsity games.
So it is helpful to have, well, yes. So the scorekeeper table and chairs, all that kind of stuff is the same. And it's the same thing. A sideline field marshal is recommended. Um, because we just never know. Again, most of the time people behave. Um, Sometimes they don't. And so that's kind of the beauty of the field marshal. They can kind of help take care of that. Or if all else fails, they can at least come around and let the officials know exactly who the problem person is, so we can just make sure that person leaves. And then we don't have a problem anymore. And then for the away team should still have the health and safety sheets for their team because if there is some sort of accident on the field, and a player needs to be treated, we need that to know, do they have allergies? Are they allowed to have Tylenol? That kind of thing. Um, they should have roster sheets for themselves, the opposing team, and the officials as well. Um, Technically, the away team does not have to have table personnel. The scorekeeper and the spotter are both optional, but recommended, especially if you want to keep stats for your team. You really need a scorekeeper and a spotter at the table. So it's recommended, not required for the away team.
And a
And
follow-up
this is
question on that is if the home team does not have two people at the table, is it a forfeit for the home team?
so there should be a scorekeeper and timekeeper for the home team. Occasionally, what has happened is an assistant coach has had to sit there and do it. Um, and sometimes we've had one person do both if they, time keep and score keep if they have to. We have occasionally had some JV games where not enough parents could get to the table fast enough, and the away team actually did the official scorekeeper timekeeper because both teams agreed because they had enough personnel to do it. Um, so we haven't yet had a situation where a team has not been able to find the personnel for it. But if that happened, that would be a discussion between the teams and the officials to determine how that was going to go. But there has to be an official scorekeeper and timekeeper. And then that's for both JV and varsity, those table personnel. Um, it's important to remember scorekeeper, timekeeper, spotters. Um, if you are at the table, you are official game personnel. So that means you're completely neutral. You don't belong to any team when you're at the table. You're essentially official game staff there to help the officials keep the game under control, keep everything on track. So if you really, really, really want to cheer for your kid, don't volunteer to be a scorekeeper, timekeeper, spotter. Um, those folks have to be neutral. So you can't cheer, you can't yell, you can't call fouls from the table area. You're just completely neutral. So it's a good opportunity to watch a game and not worry not worry about the outcome of the game. You're busy doing a job and you still get to watch your kid play, but scorekeepers, timekeepers have to be neutral. Okay, varsity games. So at the high school level, we're doing a 12-minute quarter, four quarters, four 12-minute quarters, and varsity in Arizona runs a stop clock. So the timekeeper will stop the clock after every goal, stop the clock if we have to do a redraw, stop the clock if the official calls a timeout. If there becomes a 10 or more goal differential, varsity will become a running clock. Before the game starts, the officials will work with the table to make sure the timekeeper and scorekeeper know what the length of halftime will be, and will remind you about the length of timeouts and that kind of thing. Um, but the length of halftime, the max is 10 minutes, but oftentimes when we do the coaches and captains meetings, coaches will agree to a shorter halftime, like 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So the officials will work with you to make sure you know the length of halftime before the game starts. Um, the rules changed last year where instead of stopping the clock for fouls in the critical scoring area in the last 2 minutes of the second quarter and the fourth quarter, because when we went from halves to quarters, it was getting confusing that we were only stopping the clock some quarters and not every quarter. So last year, the rule was changed. And instead of 2 minutes, it's 1 minute at the end of every quarter. So the last minute of every quarter, if there are fouls in the critical scoring area, we're going to stop the clock and everything's going to be a whistle start. So it's really helpful for the table, the timekeeper, to call out very loudly 1 minute when we hit that 1 minute mark every quarter, so the officials know that now we're moving to stop for some of these fouls in the critical scoring area. Um, if there's a 10 goal differential, though, you're still going to yell 1 minute, but we're not going to be stopping the clock for fouls in the critical scoring area. We're only going to stop the clock for official timeouts. Um, so when we get to that last minute of the quarter, we have the picture here of the official doing the timeout signal. So if you see that, you're going to stop the clock. Um, In the last minute, we'll stop the clock for goals. So when the official does the goal signal, we'll stop the clock. And then if there are fouls in the critical scoring area, and you can see the little graphic there where the critical scoring area is in yellow. So if there's a foul anywhere in that area, we're going to stop in the last minute. And then for things like cards, offsides, alternate possession, injury, we're going to stop the clock for varsity games. JV games are pretty similar, but instead of a stop clock, we're doing the 12-minute quarters, but they're a running clock. We're still going to call out the 1 minute warning to the officials and players in the last minute of every quarter.
And I think you just clarified that, but there was a question that
Okay.
you're calling the 1 minute at every quarter, not just for fouls, correct?
So what the timekeeper will do is when that 12-minute clock runs down and there's only a minute left, they're just going to yell 1 minute so everyone on the field hears them, so that the officials know that we're down to the last minute of the quarter. So we know that we're going to be stopping the clock for certain things in the critical scoring area. And that way we know it's a whistle start. We can tell the players it's a whistle start. And that's for varsity. I'll go back here real quick. So for varsity, we're always stopping the clock. If we don't have a 10 goal differential, we're stopping the clock after goals and we restart at a draw. Um, if we're in the last minute, we're still doing that, but we're also going to stop the clock in the last minute if there's a foul in the critical scoring area. So if there's a foul and we're setting up an 8-meter free position, we're going to stop the clock in the last minute. And then again, we'll stop the clock for cards, offsides, alternate possession, injury. JV will be a little bit different. So for JV, because JV does a running clock, in the last minute of each quarter, we'll stop the clock for things like injury or some other official timeout. We're still not stopping the clock for goals or fouls in the CSA in the last minute of a JV game because they're on a running clock. Okay. So the official scorekeeper needs to make sure they've got an accurate roster with names and numbers of every player. So the official scorekeeper, the home team scorekeeper, has their own roster, and they have to have a copy of the roster from the other team because that's the official score. So they're going to have both rosters. Um, the roster has to have the name and number of every player, and it's got to be there prior to the start of the game. The official scorekeeper needs to keep an accurate record of all the goals scored. They're going to keep it for both teams on the home team's score sheet. They're going to keep track of everybody's goals. Again, it's recommended that the visiting team have a scorer and score sheet at the table, but it's not required. But the home team absolutely must have an official scorekeeper. Um, the official scorekeeper is the one that's helping the officials keep track of alternate possession and moving the indicator so we can keep track of that. And the scorekeeper should be continuously displaying an accurate score. Most of the time, it works great. Every once in a while, you know, someone's been using a scoreboard and it goes out, something happens, electricity goes out, battery dies. We figure it out and move on. But ideally, the score is always displayed. If something happens where we lose an electronic display and we don't have it, the officials will just work with the official scorekeeper to make sure um, that the score the officials have matches what the table has so we can catch any problems right away and fix it. But that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, the scoreboards work fine, um, and we're all good with that. Um, so the official scorekeeper also has to keep track of player cards on that official score sheet, and we're keeping it by player number. Um, if a coach, head coach, assistant coach, players on the bench, fans of a team, anyone else gets a card, those are recorded in the score sheet and they're recorded as a card against the head coach. So unfortunately, the head coach is responsible for their own behavior as well as the behavior of basically everyone else affiliated with their team. So players on the field get their own cards, and every other card gets attributed to the head coach. So we have to keep track of that. If a coach gets a card, that coach has to select a player on the field to come sit in the penalty box on the coach's behalf. If you're the scorekeeper and that happens, do not mark a yellow card for player 6 that the coach picked to come off the field. Player 6 did not get a card. Number 6 did not get a card. The coach did. So you'll mark the yellow and you'll mark coach next to it instead of a number because we don't want that player who is sitting out on their coach's behalf to get dinged as if they had a card. Because if she goes back in the game and accidentally checks someone in the head 10 minutes later, we don't want her out the rest of the game for 2 cards when really she only had 1 card. So just make sure if a coach gets a card, you don't write down the number of the player. You're going to write down coach. You can do C or you can write the word coach, but don't put the player number next to that card. It's the coach's card. Um, if a goalie is carded, a couple of things will happen. So if a goalie is carded and the team has a second dressed goalie, the goalie has to come out for her yellow card, and the second dressed goalie goes in and acts as the new goalie. But that team now is still not down a player. So the coach has to select an additional player to leave the field and sit in the box with the goalie. Do not attribute a card to that player that has to sit there with the goalie. You just put yellow and you put the goalie's number. not the player that has to sit there with her. If a goalie gets a card and the team does not have another dressed goalkeeper, the goalie can stay in the cage, but the coach has to select another player to sit out for the goalie's card so that the team is a man down like they should be. So same thing. Even though the goalie stayed in, you're going to mark the yellow card and you're going to put the goalie's number. You're not going to put the number of the poor girl who has to sit out for her. It's the goalie's card. So we just want to make sure if a coach gets a card or if a goalie gets a card, we're attributing the card correctly and not penalizing the girl who has to serve on their behalf. Does that make sense for everyone? Hopefully there's no questions on that. Um, so we're going to record the time on the game clock as well when a player or coach gets a yellow card, hopefully not a red card, but anytime there's a yellow or red card, we're going to mark the time. We're going to mark the card, the player number, and the time. If a player gets a card at the end of a quarter, end of a game, right when the clock is buzzing, just mark the time as 00. It's fine.
So there's a clarification on the goalie card. If can the cage ever be unattended if a goalie gets a card?
Well, technically, yes. So usually that does not happen, but um, if a goalie gets a yellow card and we do one of those two scenarios and say 15 minutes later in a game, that goalie gets another yellow card. Now, because she's had two yellow cards, she can't play in the game anymore. She has to leave the field and she can't go back in the rest of the game. So at that point, her team has a choice. We can either stop for a minute because they didn't have another dressed goalie, for example, we can stop and wait for a field player on that team to put on the goalie gear and be the goalie, in which case another player will come out and serve the card for the goalie who can't play anymore. Or the team can elect not to put someone in the cage. So you could theoretically have a situation where you don't have a goalie because of cards. Um, I've only, in probably about 10 years, I've only seen that happen once. And by the time the goalie got her second card, there was literally something like 30 seconds left in the JV game on a running clock. Um, and she was the only dressed goalie, and the coach said, "Don't worry about it. We'll have an empty net for 30 seconds." And so we went. That's what we did. But so it can happen, but it very rarely happens. Um, if any player gets a second yellow card, the official scorekeeper needs to make sure that the officials know. Now, the officials on the field, we do keep track of cards, but we're doing a lot of stuff. So it's really helpful for the official scorekeeper when they're looking at the score sheet and marking the cards to just tell us, hey, that's number 12's second yellow. And that way we know number 12 cannot come back into the game. So in that case, number 12 has to sit out for her second 2 minute period. When her 2 minutes are up, she cannot go back in the game for the rest of the game if it's her second yellow card. But the coach can send in a different player at the end of that 2 minutes. Um, Also, the official scorekeeper will need to let the officials know if a team hits their fourth yellow card. So once a team hits 4 yellow cards, they play a permanent man down the rest of the game, and that's a man down on both sides of the field. And from that point on, they're playing an additional man down for every subsequent card. So at 4 yellow cards, you're permanently one man down. At 5 yellow cards, you're permanently two men down. At 6 yellow cards, you're permanently three men down. We really hope no one gets to that point. We we would ideally like to have as few yellow cards as possible in a game, but just be aware if we do have a game that gets pretty rough and there's lots of yellow cards, we may have situations where we have teams multiple players down. The officials will sign the official score sheet at the end of the game. We'll check and make sure our goal count matches your goal count, our cards match your cards, and we'll sign off. The officials don't have to sign the visiting team score sheet because the home team is the official score sheet, so that's the one we'll sign. We'll just make sure everything matches. Um, no more than 5 people can be in the table area. So home team gets 3 people, scorekeeper, timekeeper, spotter. Away team gets a scorekeeper and a spotter if they want them. So we can't have like 15 people hanging out at the table. It's just much too crowded. So that's the max the league allows. Um, if you have personnel that are running things like a PA system or film, that kind of thing, ideally they should be on the opposite side of the field as the score table. So they'll be on the fan side of the field, or if you're in a stadium in the box, something like that. Um, if you're at a game in a stadium, fans can be on both sides of the field as long as there's a barrier between the team's bench area and where the fans are. So I'll use Higley as an example. They have a stadium with stands on both sides. Between the teams with the table, there's a whole track and a fence before the, next set of stands. So fans over there could be on both sides of the field and it's fine because there's a barrier. Now, fans can't come and, set up their chairs behind the table on the track, but as long as they're in the stands behind the barrier, so if you're in a stadium, fans can be on both sides of the field. If there's no barrier, then the fans are always on the opposite side of the field as the team bench area and the table area. Okay, so the official timekeeper. The official timekeeper is going to start the clock at the first draw every quarter and then stop the clock when the officials do the whistle and arm signal for every goal. And then you'll start again when we whistle for the next draw. You'll stop the clock if the officials signal a timeout. It's pretty simple. If there's a 10 or more goal differential, you will no longer stop the clock for redraws or goals, only if the official signals a timeout. Um, and then again, the timekeeper is the one that will notify the officials when there's 1 minute left in the quarter for all of the quarters. JV's pretty similar, but again, because JV's on a running clock, the official timekeeper starts the clock at the first draw of every quarter and lets the officials know when there's a minute left in all the quarters. And then if the officials signal a timeout for something like a card or an injury, the timekeeper will stop the clock and then restart it when the officials signal to restart play. So JV timekeeper is a little more simple, a little bit easier than varsity. Both varsity and JV, you're going to sound a horn at the end of every quarter, end of the game. We're only going to stop the clock, other than the things I mentioned, if we get a whistle from the official and a request from the official to stop the clock. So it doesn't happen very often, but we had at a Lax for Life tournament in December. Someone's dog got off the leash and ran out onto the field. So if something like that happens and the officials signal, then you'll stop the clock so we can get the dog off the field for safety, that kind of thing. It doesn't happen too often, but every once in a while, we've occasionally had massive tumbleweeds come flying through Pecos Park, and we've had to stop the clock so we could get rid of them, and then have the girls come back out and play. But again, it doesn't happen very often. But the officials will let you know, will blow the whistle and signal timeout if something weird like that happens. We did once have a rattlesnake on a field. We had to stop the clock for that, but again, not very often. So you'll let the officials know if a team requests a timeout. So that's that quick, just double blow of the horn. Timeouts are 2 minutes. So 2 minutes is start to finish. So coach calls timeout, horn is double blowing. The 2 minutes starts right then. So when those 2 minutes are up, both teams should be back on the field. So coaches should know that and they should be getting their players back on the field. If you're the official timekeeper and you're counting down the 2 minute timeout and it's a minute 30 down and there's 30 seconds left, feel free to yell to both coaches 30 seconds so they know they need to start getting their players back out on the field. But then you'll blow the horn again at 2 minutes so the officials know the 2 minute timeout is up, and we're ready to restart the game. Um, and again, the official timekeeper is going to help the scorekeeper make sure we're noting the time on the clock when a player's serving a yellow card or a red card. Um, with JV that's on a running clock, um, if a player gets a yellow card, um, we're still going to stop the clock briefly for that card administration. So you don't have to worry with tournaments. If any of you have ever done scorekeeping, kind of stuff, helped work a table at a tournament, um, the clock never stops really. So you kind of have to make your best guess when the card was. Um, Here, you're going to stop the clock for the card and note whatever time that is. Um, and then it'll always be a whistle restart.
The
So
question
you'll
is,
keep
does
track.
the timekeeper also manage timeouts?
Yeah, so the timekeeper will keep the game clock, timeout, and card time. But oftentimes the scorekeeper and spotter will kind of help them if there's a whole bunch of stuff going on at once to kind of make sure and keep that on track. Yeah. But it's officially the timekeeper's responsibility. Um, when when a player comes out for a card, they must sit or kneel in the penalty area. And I'll show you on the field map in a little bit where that is, but basically they need to be sitting or kneeling in front of your table. They cannot wander off while their card is going on. They can't go to the bathroom. They can't go hang out with their teammates. They can't go find their water bottle. They have to sit or kneel directly in front of the table and remain there for the entire 2 minutes or 4 minutes. If they need water, if they need a band-aid, if they need whatever, their coach or a teammate can bring it to them. But they must remain in the penalty area in front of the table. When their card is winding down and it's time they can go back in, then you'll count down. So you want to count down the last 10 seconds, 10, 9, 8, and let them know release when they're free to go back onto the field. Um, just a quick little rule on this. It does not happen too often in varsity with a stop clock, but it does happen quite a bit with JV with the running clock. If a player's 2 minute yellow card runs out and they're released, but the official's hands are on the sticks for a draw, they may not enter the field. So once the official who's doing the draw walks up and puts their hands on the center's sticks, no one may enter the field. No one may cross a restraining line. Wherever those players are, whatever part of the field they're on, they are locked there. So if you have a player whose card runs out and the official's hands are on the stick, you can tell that player that they cannot enter the field until possession or until the officials blow a whistle for a penalty. So you don't have to do that. Technically, at the high school level, the coaches should know this. The coaches should have taught their players this. But if you would like to be nice and tell them you may not enter the field until possession, you can. Just make sure if you're doing that for one team, you do it for the other team. Because again, remember, we're all neutral at the table. So be nice and let them all know if this circumstance happens to them. You can't go in, your card's up, but you can't go in until possession. Or don't tell anyone. Pick, it doesn't matter. Technically, you don't have to tell them. It's nice if you do. Just make sure you're consistent with both teams. Okay, so here's our map. So you can see at the top where the table area is. the bench area. The coaches are free to go anywhere across their bench area to the end of the field on their side. The penalty area you can see there is right in front of the table, and then the sub area is also in front of the table, right up
Devin,
along the field line.
just a question, just to clarify, the
Uh-huh.
all penalties at the high school level are non-releasable, correct?
So there are no releasable cards at the high school level. That's correct. Yep, college has releasable cards, high school does not. So players will have to serve the full time no matter what. Um, and if I haven't seen this happen yet, but if we ever have a player who gets a card but manages to injure herself while getting the card and has to go away for treatment, another player from her bench area can sit in the penalty box on her behalf just so that the officials know when we're counting off sides and we check the penalty area, we know someone's in there serving a penalty. But otherwise, the player who has the card has to sit in that box. There is that goalie exception we talked about. But yeah, there's no release. Someone's sitting in that box the full 2 minutes or 4 minutes if there's a red card. Hopefully we don't get a bunch of those. Um, so the substitution area, when you look at the map, you'll see there is no line through the substitution area. So there isn't a white team substitution half and a black team substitution half. The sub area is for both teams. So the team whose bench area is on the right can sub through the left half of the sub area if they want. It's not the other team's sub area. So both teams can use the entire sub area to sub girls in and out. But players who are substituting in and out of the field must use the box. They have to go through that substitution area. They can't, go on and off the field from behind the restraining line, that kind of thing. They've got to use that substitution area.
Devin, can you clarify the requirements for players to kneel during penalty?
Yeah, so any player who has a card needs to be in that penalty area and they need to sit or kneel in that area because the table personnel still needs to be able to see the field. So we can't have girls standing in front of the table. They've got to sit or kneel there and they have to stay there the full 2 minutes. But if they need water, if they need a bandage, anything like that, their coach or a teammate can bring it to them. But they've got to stay in that penalty area and they've got to be sitting or kneeling so the table is unimpeded. Um, the substitution area. Players may not hang out in the substitution area. We should only be running through it quickly when we're subbing. So the rule is a player may enter the substitution area when substitution is imminent. So when number 8 blue wants to sub for number 30 blue, she can run into the sub area as she's calling out that other player's name or number for them to come off the field and her to go on. She can't go stand in the sub area and wait for 5 minutes until she's ready to sub on. So that would be an illegal substitution. So if you are at the table and players start kind of moving into the sub area, standing around, but they're not actually subbing and they're blocking your view, you can absolutely, as table personnel, remind them they may not stand in the substitution area if they're not subbing and make them move back to the bench area. Technically, if you look at this map, the table should be a full 4 meters away from the sideline. And the coach area and bench area should also be the full 4 meters off the field. Now, some of our fields are big enough that we can do this. Occasionally, there are teams playing on fields like some of you, if you've been around a while, you remember Chandler's old fields um, at the Great Hearts Academy, Chandler Prep, that was over at Alma School in Elliott, I think it was. They had next to no space on the table side of the field. So If your team is playing in a field like that, we're going to set up the table and the bench and coach area as far back from the field as we can, understanding you might only be 5 feet back instead of 4 meters. But ideally, and if there's space, we're 4 meters back. If we don't have that much space, just keep everything as far back as you can. Hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Okay. So signals to recognize if you are at the table so you know when to stop or start the clock. If the official does this redraw signal, JV, you're going to ignore it because the clock's just still going to run. Varsity, we would stop the clock for a redraw, and then as soon as the official blows the whistle for a new draw, we're going to start the clock again. For both for varsity, we're going to stop the clock on goals. So if you think a player scored, do not stop the clock. We're going to wait until the official blows their whistle and does this signal before we stop. Because anytime there's a goal, the officials are communicating with each other in different ways, usually hand signals, to determine did any of the officials see a dangerous propel or dangerous follow through? Was there a goal circle violation? Any of those kinds of things that would cause the goal to not count. So don't stop the clock if you think there was a goal. Wait for the signal, just in case there's a reason the goal won't count. Because if the goal doesn't count, we're going to keep the clock running. If the goal counts and the official signals it, then we're going to stop the clock and restart at the draw. For JV, the clock is just going to keep running. So we're not going to stop the clock on goals. Also, if you're the scorekeeper, don't mark a goal in the scorebook until the official signals. So that way, again, just in case, if there's some sort of foul that's going to cause the goal to not count, you're not trying to erase goals from your goal book. So just wait for the official signal. Official timeouts. So the officials will signal if you're varsity, you're going to stop the clock. JV, the clock is still going to run for most of this, except for a card and an injury. But we'll for varsity, we'll stop the clock for offsides. We'll stop the clock for alternate possession. We'll stop the clock for a card. We'll stop the clock for injury. And again, for JV, it's just those last two. Um,
Hey, Devin,
stats.
I missed a question back on the
Okay.
map you had on the field, but the question is if the sub area includes 5 yards inside the field.
So the substitution box is, let's go back. We'll go back to the map real quick. So no, it's just, so it's showing this 5 yard mark because what it is the sub area is from that center line of the field. It's 5 yards on either side of it, but the entire sub area is off the field. So if girls are ready to sub, they have to stay completely off the field in this substitution area until the player they're subbing for comes fully out, and then they can go on the field. So here, these 5 yard marks are just to let you know that the substitution area is 10 yards wide, but it's fully off the field. So hopefully that clarifies that. Okay. So statistics that we're looking at. Most teams keep more statistics than are required. Um, if you are the official scorekeeper, you only have to keep track of goals and cards. At the end of the game, that's what the officials are checking. We're going to make sure your score sheet, where you have goals marked for both teams and cards marked for both teams, matches what we have. Um, we do not look at any of the rest of that stuff. So your team might care, your coach might care. Um, you don't need to stress out too much. If you miss a turnover, the officials couldn't care less. You do the best you can. All we care about is we're going to get the goals right, we're going to get the cards right. We'll talk about the rest of these things and how they're defined and how you might mark them. But for all these other stats, the game happens fast. You're going to mark what you see the best you can, and if you miss something, you miss something. We'll all live with it. So you don't have to have a score sheet that looks exactly like this, but I'll show you kind of a sample so that you can get a sense, if you've not done this before, of what a score sheet might look like. Um, I would strongly recommend, if you're going to be scorekeeping, that you put your players on the score sheet in numerical order. So don't do it by name. Do it by numerical order because your spotter's going to be calling out what's happening by number and you're going to be keeping track of it that way. And so if you just have the numbers in order, it is so much easier to find the right player on your score sheet and mark it quickly. Because if it's by name, but your partner is calling out by number because things are happening so fast, it's much harder to find the player on the score sheet. So do it in numerical order. It's so much easier if you do it that way. Um, Also, where we have the list that says player, make sure you put your goalie in that list. Because even though at the bottom of the screen here we have all these stats for our goalies, goalies can get a number of stats that are farther up on the sheet that field players get, like a caused turnover or a ground ball. So you want your goalie listed in that numerical list so that if your goalie does get a ground ball, something like that, you can mark it for them. So put the player names in there, but do it in numerical order. It's so much easier. Um, Shots are regular shots taken by a player. The FP is free position shots. So if a player is awarded an 8-meter free position and she actually takes the shot, you'd mark it there. Then we have a spot for assists. We're going to mark if a player gets a goal. Um, for draw control, the centers who take the draw, you're going to mark them taken. They took a draw. So if number one takes the draw, you're going to give her a little tick mark next to the T. Control is whoever comes away with that ball. We'll talk about it more as we go. We're going to mark there. Um, Most teams ignore the one. And if you only have one girl who takes the majority of your draws, you really don't need to worry about that. But if you have two or three girls that are constantly switching off who's taking the draw, and you want to keep track um, of whether or not your team gets the ball when your particular player is taking the draw, that's when we'll use that. And we can we'll talk about that a little bit later. So some teams will use it and some won't. Ground balls, cause turnover, turnovers, and then here where it says foul, yellow, or red, that's where we're going to mark a card for a player, and then we're going to mark more detail on the other side. And I'll show the other side in a minute. Also, for any type of score sheet, it's really helpful if you keep a ruler in with your scorebook because the ruler will really help your scorekeeper stay on the correct line so that you're giving the right player the right stat. And then this is the backside of a common score sheet. So your team, the other team, and then we're going to keep track here of the goals by quarter. So you're going to put the number of the player who got the goal and the time they got the goal. And then if there was an assist with that goal in that little end section, we're going to put the number of the girl who got the assist. At the underneath that, you'll see timeouts, so you can mark out what time a team took a timeout. At the high school level, each team gets 2 timeouts per game. So once they've used both timeouts, they just don't have any more. Cards. So this is where we're going to keep track. Ideally, um, we would like to not see more than 4 cards. The fewer the better. If you do have a game though where there are more cards, you can just add more at the bottom or next to it. But we're going to mark down every time a player number for a card, or we're going to put C for coach. We're going to mark the time of the card and you'll circle if it's yellow or red. So we'll just keep track of all those cards. And we'll be keeping track of all the cards. If you're the official scorekeeper, all the cards for both teams. Okay. So games played. The definition in the NCAA stats book, which is what the Arizona Girls League has used for games played, because it's kind of a common sense definition. Um, you'll mark a player as having played in the game if they actually play in the game. So if they're on the field while the clock's running, even if they get no other stats, they've played in the game because they were on the field while the clock was running. If if you have a player who is on the bench the entire game, don't mark them as played in the game. Even if they were dressed in their uniform and they were there and warmed up with the team, if they never went out on the field, don't mark them as having played in that game. So we're only going to mark a player for having played in the game if they were on the field while the clock was running. There's only one really rare exception, and I've never seen it happen in the Arizona High School League, but if the clock is stopped in a varsity game, for example, because it's after a goal and a player has subbed on the field and, say, for example, starts a fight with the player next to her and gets carded for that, even though the clock was not running while she was on the field and it's a dead ball situation, you're going to mark her as having played in a game because she got a card. But again, never seen that happen. Hopefully, I never do. But that is the rare exception. So in general, if they're on the field while the clock's running, played in the game. If not, they didn't play in the game.
There's a question, Devin. I think I can take this one about how we mark if they're played in the game. I don't believe it's on the score sheet. It was in the old stats tool that we used for the league website. Had a box you
Yeah.
checked game played. Um, I think Megan's on the call. She might be able to clarify if the new stats tool has that available or not.
Okay.
Sorry, I just stepped away. What the new stats tool for
Uh,
which?
yeah, do you know if it has like the old stats tool, you would check a box when you were recording the stats on whether a player played in a game or not? Does the new tool have something similar?
You know what? I am going to be getting to that once we do our play date next week, and I'll do a full video of how to do all the stats. So that
Okay,
will be to be determined.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then that's the answer. It may or may not have a spot in the official league stats tool. Some of your scorebooks will have it, depending on what type of scorebook you use. So I guess more to be determined on that one. Again, the officials don't care if you mark this correctly or not, but your team might care. The league might care. A save. So the definition of a save is any time a ball is stopped or deflected with any part of the goalie's body or stick that would have been a goal if it had not been for that goalie's body or stick, we're going to count it as a save. So if you're the spotter and scorekeeper, what you're doing is you are watching play and you are making your best guess. If the goalie's body or stick touches that ball, you have to decide if the goalie had not been there, would the ball have gone in the goal or not? If the ball would have gone in the goal, you're going to give the goalie a save. If the ball would not have gone in the goal, we are not giving the goalie a save. So if someone makes a really bad shot and it's 3 feet outside the goal cage and the goalie steps to the side and catches that ball, it's not a save. Because if the goalie had not caught it, it would never have gone in the goal. It would have just flown past. So we're not going to count that as a save. But if in that situation the goalie steps over and catches the ball, we're going to give the goalie a ground ball for that. So it's not a save, but we're going to give him a ground ball because they've come away with that ball. Um, if the ball hits the pipe, it is not a save. It's only a save if the goalie's body or stick prevents it from going in the goal. That's it. So if a ball hits the pipe, it's an errant shot. There's no save. For goalies, saves and ground balls are mutually exclusive. So if a player shoots low and the ball hits the ground and the goalie stops the ball in front of the cage on the ground, if the ball would have gone in the goal, we're going to give the goalie a save. Um, Not a ground ball. It's a save, even if it's stopped on the ground. But if the goalie comes away with a ball that would never have gone in the cage, we're going to give her a ground ball because it's not a save. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. We'll look at some film at the end that will kind of um, help everyone to sort of see the difference. But a goalie can have a save or a ground ball, not both. A clear. Some teams keep track of this and some don't. So if you're going to do the scorekeeping spotting, just talk to your team about whether or not they care if you keep track of this or not.
Devin,
By defin
before you go on the clear, just a clarification on the
Okay.
shots. If there's a free position shot and it completely misses the net, would you still consider that a shot?
Yes, bad shots are still shots. So it would be an errant shot. Yeah. So we would mark it as a shot and then we'd mark it as errant. So clears, by definition, a good clear is when a team successfully transitions the ball from their defensive third of the field to their offensive third of the field. A clear often involves a goalie, but not always. Sometimes you might have a good defender that makes an interception in their defensive end of the field, and the field players clear the ball to the offense. The goalie never touched the ball. It's still a good clear. So anytime a clear is a team stat, technically not a goalie stat. Anytime a team moves the ball from the defensive third to the offensive third successfully, it's a good clear. It's considered a bad or broken clear if the other team comes away with the ball before that team can get the ball into their offensive third of the field. Turnovers. So a turnover occurs when a player or team in possession of the ball loses possession in a live ball situation. There are a few exceptions, but almost always it's going to be a live ball situation. So if a single player is the one that we determine is mostly responsible for the turnover, then we're going to call the turnover against that player. So on the score sheet, you're going to mark a turnover for that player. Sometimes we can't really judge a single player being responsible. For example, if the white team has the ball and they've crossed over the restraining line into their scoring end of the field, and an extra girl accidentally crosses and the team is now offsides, the ball will turn over to the other team, but really, from the score table, you don't know whose fault it is that an extra player crossed. So you're not going to mark a turnover for any particular player. It's just considered a team turnover, that kind of thing. But if a girl makes a really bad pass and the ball turns over, you're going to give her the turnover. If she makes a good pass and her teammate just completely botches the catch, then you're going to give the turnover to the girl who didn't catch the ball. There's a little bit of a judgment call there. Just to clarify, a missed shot is never considered a turnover, even if there's a change of possession. Because when a player shoots, they are intentionally giving up the ball in the hopes that it goes into the goal. We're not considering that a turnover. So if she shoots and the goalie gets the ball, we're not considering it a turnover for the shooter. If she shoots and misses the cage wide and it goes out of bounds, we're not considering it a turnover for her. If she shoots and a player from the other team picks it up before it goes out of bounds, still not a turnover. So a missed shot will never be considered a turnover. A caused turnover or a forced turnover, these are the good ones. So this happens when a player makes some sort of deliberate movement um, to cause the other team to lose the ball. So a really good check. So if a defender makes a really good check and comes away with that ball, it's a cause turnover. If we have a team intercepts a pass, it's a cause turnover. Those kinds of things. Um, if you take a charge, so you're playing good defense, girl comes running at you and you don't move out of her way and she runs you down and your team gets the ball, that's a cause turnover. You get a cause turnover for that, for taking that hit for your team. Um, Not all turnovers for one team are considered a cause turnover for the other team. In general, there will be a lot fewer cause turnovers than turnovers. So we'll kind of talk about how we want to balance that with our stats at the end of a game to kind of make sure we're on track. Um, if we have a player playing good defense and the player she's defending against just drops the ball for no reason, we're not going to give the defender a cause turnover because she didn't do something specific to make the player lose the ball. The player just lost the ball accidentally, uncaused on her own. Ground balls. So we're going to record a ground ball when the ball changes possession during live play. So we're not going to award a ground ball if a pass or shot goes out of bounds and a team is awarded the ball. We're not going to give that girl who was awarded the ball a ground ball. So boundary balls, never ground balls. Um, However, if a player takes a shot and say it hits the pipe and bounces back into the field of play, whatever player picks up that ball and comes away with it will give them a ground ball. So if a shot does not leave the field of play, if it does not go out of bounds, whatever player from either team comes away with that ball is going to get a ground ball for that. Um, so we're also going to give a ground ball to a player if they make an interception in the field of play. So the ball doesn't actually have to technically hit the ground for us to give someone a ground ball. So if we have a player who makes a check and catches the ball before it hits the ground, she gets the cause turnover and the ground ball. If she makes the check and then picks up the ball after it hits the ground, she gets a cause turnover and a ground ball. If she intercepts the ball and it never touches the ground, she gets a cause turnover and a ground ball. If we're giving a player a cause turnover because she takes a charge, she will not get a ground ball for that. She'll just get the cause turnover because the official will blow the whistle, call the foul, award her the ball. So it's a little bit different there. Assists. We're not always giving an assist to the player who passed the ball before a goal. So some goals will be assisted, some won't. Some teams will have more assists than others, depending on how their coaches run their offense. But in order for a player to get credit for an assist, there needs to be some sort of conscious, deliberate effort on their part to find an open player to pass to them for them to get a shot or to help them work free for a shot. So most goals are not assisted most of the time in the league in the past, but we will see a fair number of assists with teams. But again, we've got to make sure a player is making some sort of deliberate effort to find an open player that they can pass to who will be free to shoot. Sometimes you'll hear rules like, oh, well, if a player makes a pass and the girl who caught the ball doesn't take more than 3 seconds to shoot or doesn't take more than 5 steps, it's an assist. No, there's no such rule. So there's no particular distance or time frame that you have to meet for something to be an assist. It should be part of the same play, but there isn't any specific time frame or amount of space that that this needs to happen in. If a player passes the ball to her teammate and that teammate has to dodge the defense before they can shoot, it's not an assist. So it's just not. So we don't necessarily have to shoot really quickly or shoot without taking steps, but if we're the shooter and we get a pass and we have to evade defenders, then it's not an assist. Okay, draw control. So whoever takes the draw is going to get the tick mark for draw taken, both teams. And then draw control is awarded to whoever comes away with that ball after the draw, or whoever made it possible for her team to come away with the ball during the draw. And we'll kind of look at some film where you can sort of see where you might have to make a judgment call on that. If the draw is taken and the ball goes flying and ends up on the ground, we're not going to give anyone a ground ball. So just like saves and ground balls are mutually exclusive, it's one or the other. Draw controls and ground balls are mutually exclusive. It's one or the other. So if we have a draw, someone's going to get a draw control, not a ground ball. Okay, for our cards. There are some mandatory cards. So we've got up here the signals for them, so you'll recognize them when the officials do the signals. But check to the head, and that includes, by definition in the rule book, the face and the neck. So sticks should not be coming anywhere near the sphere, which is 7 inches all the way around from the shoulders up around a player's head and neck. So we shouldn't have any sticks hitting players' head, face, neck. It's a mandatory card. We will often hear players out there very upset, but it was an accident, is what they'll say. We know it was an accident. That's why they're getting a yellow card. If we thought for a second some player was running around out there deliberately trying to hit girls in the head with her stick, it would be a red card. So checks to the head, it doesn't matter if it's an accident or on purpose, they're still getting carded. We've got to be careful with our sticks, not hitting girls in the head. Most of the girls don't wear helmets. And so we've got to be really careful to make sure we're calling all of those to protect the players. So it doesn't matter if it's an accident or not, they're getting carded. Dangerous propel. So a dangerous propel, there are a number of ways it can happen. You don't have to hit another player with the ball to be called for a dangerous propel. If you shoot and hit a teammate or opponent with the ball, it's a dangerous propel. If you shoot unsafely and nearly hit your teammate or an opponent, it can still be a dangerous propel. If you are running to pick up a ground ball and an opponent is running in too, and you want to beat them to the ground ball, and without looking, you just wildly flick that ball in the air and you hit or nearly hit some other player on the field, that's a dangerous propel. So dangerous propels aren't only in shooting. It's really any time a player propels that ball in an unsafe way without paying attention to where the other players are on the field, and they hit or nearly hit someone with the ball. Dangerous follow through. So when we're shooting, we need to be careful to watch our stick in our follow through on the shot. So if we are shooting and we hit another player with the stick, it's going to be a dangerous follow through. There are some exceptions to that. If any of you watch a lot of college lacrosse, there was a controversial play last year. Some folks from one of the teams that played against Syracuse was really upset, thought the officials messed up the call. But if you guys know who Emma Ward is, she plays for Syracuse. She has a really powerful shot. Like, I would not want to be in front of her shooting. I would not want to be a goalie if that girl's shooting, but really powerful shot. She cranked her stick back and took a shot in one of the games last year, and she hit a player with her stick. And the officials did not call her for a dangerous follow-through. And the reason why is when she started shooting, there was no one in front of her. She was halfway through the act of shooting when the other team's defender jumped in front of her and got hit with the stick. If that happens, we're not calling dangerous follow through because the shooter had started shooting safely and someone chose to jump in front of their stick. Um, so not every time a player gets hit with a stick is it a dangerous follow through. It often is, but not always. The signal though for dangerous follow through and dangerous propel, as you can see on here, is the same. Either way, so if that happens, you'll see the official making that signal. Slash. A slash is really any kind of dangerous, reckless, out of control, sweeping check with a stick. You don't have to hit someone with your stick for it to be considered a slash. You can miss the player you're swinging at, it's still a slash. Um, Not every one-handed check is a slash. If it's a big, huge sweeping check, it's probably a slash. But if it's a really careful, controlled one-handed check, it's not necessarily a slash. It's really about the sweeping motion and this really kind of unsafe, dangerous move is what makes it a slash. Um, Dangerous contact is kind of a catch-all, any sort of play that makes contact with another player that the official thinks is dangerous enough to warrant a card would be considered dangerous contact. So, for example, if we have a player who has the ball and she's running down the field and her opponent comes up behind her on her blind side, turns their stick horizontal, and just runs through her, hitting her in the top of her shoulders with a stick, slams her to the ground, we're going to call dangerous contact on that. We have a completely defenseless player slammed to the ground with a stick, dangerous contact. So those kinds of things is where we're going to be calling dangerous contact. Every once in a while, you'll see a player take the butt end of their stick and just jab it into the rib cage of their opponent, dangerous contact. So we're not going to be doing that kind of behavior. We shouldn't be poking girls in the ribs with our sticks, that sort of thing. So we can call dangerous contact for that sort of play. Misconduct is also a card, so that's all that excessive dissent, repeated major fouls, all those kinds of things that keep happening over and over again. Taunting, inappropriate language, all those kinds of things will get called for misconduct. So those are the mandatory cards. There are other cards, so dangerous play, it can be called as a major foul, or if the official thinks it's bad enough, they can card it. A dangerous shot only involves the shooter and the goalie. So if we have a goalie in the cage and a player is shooting, and she just comes running full speed toward the goalie, shoots as hard as she can, the goalie's not even moving, and she hits the goalie in the helmet or right in the sternum, we're going to call a dangerous shot on that. She should be trying to shoot around the goalie, not through her. Now, if she shoots and the goalie moves into the shot to block it, we're not going to call a dangerous shot. And a dangerous shot, again, it can be a major foul or it can be carded depending on how dangerous it looks to the officials. Repeated major fouls can be carded. So if we have players that keep pushing over and over and over again, and we've called pushing repeatedly, we can start carding that. Repeated delay of games. At some point, if we keep getting those sorts of calls, we can start carding. And when we talk about the green card situation in a minute, we'll kind of cover that. So a yellow card, 2 minutes in the penalty area, non-releasable. If a player later in the game gets a second yellow card, they're going to serve another 2 minutes in the penalty area, and they're out for the rest of the game. 2 yellow cards don't equal a red card, though. They're completely different things. So if a player gets 2 yellows, they're suspended. They can't play in the rest of that game. It's the end of that game. They can play in the next game or any future game. They just can't play the rest of that game. We talked about this earlier, but again, once a team hits 4 yellow cards, they're permanently a man down. 5 yellow cards, permanently 2 men down. 6 yellow cards, permanently 3 men down, so on. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but it does occasionally happen. Red card. If a player gets a red card, they will sit in the penalty box for 4 minutes, non-releasable. After that 4 minutes, they cannot play in the rest of that game. And on top of that, they may not play in any other AGLA game until they sit out their team's next scheduled game at the same level as the one where they just got the card. And it's the next scheduled game when they get the card. So what that means is, we'll give some examples here. If we have a varsity game and number 10 gets a red card, and there's a JV game scheduled on March 3rd, and number 10 is a flex player that plays some of both JV and varsity games, she cannot play in that March 3rd JV game. If there's another JV game on March 5th, she can't play in that either. The next varsity game, when she got her card, was scheduled for March 5th. So on March 5th, she serves her game suspension, and then she can play in games after that. So she cannot play in any games until she serves her suspension at the next varsity game on March 5th. So we have another example. If we have a JV game and number 10 gets a card in the JV game, and then there's a varsity game right after it that night, and she's a flex player, she cannot play in that varsity game. Then when we have that JV game on March 3rd, she serves her game suspension. If there's a varsity game on the 3rd right after it, she could play in that game because she's already served her suspension at the same level where she got her card. So here, if we have this player, number 10, she gets her red card on March 1st, and there's a really important game for that varsity team on March 7th, the team cannot move another game in between March 1st and March 2nd. If they do, she can't play, and she still can't play in the March 7th game because that's the game where she has to serve her suspension, because that was the next scheduled game at the same level when she got her card. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. We can't manipulate game schedules to try and make sure that good players can play in really important games. At the moment that player gets a red card on the field, whatever is the next scheduled game at that same level, they cannot play again until they serve their suspension during that scheduled game. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, green cards. So green cards usually happen when we have lots of delay of game, repeated major fouls, that kind of thing. And again, we talked about this at the beginning. Just like last year, managing the green card delay of game is, again, a point of emphasis this year. So what'll happen is if we have players who repeatedly refuse to move behind or away after a foul when we're telling them to move away, if a ball goes out of bounds, players on the field need to allow 2 meters for the girl to bring the ball onto the field to restart play. So if they keep walking right up to the boundary line and not let the girl come on the field, that kind of thing, if that keeps happening, we can start green carding for delay of game. Players have to self-start if there's a foul within 4 meters of where the foul was. So if players try and self-start halfway down the field because the ball rolled down there and that keeps happening, we can start carding for that for delay of game because we have to stop the clock, move them back, restart everything, and it just slows the game down. So officials will usually give players a warning that we can't be doing that. And if they keep doing it, we'll start green carding. If a player gets called, say, for a charge and just flips the ball away 20 yards down the field instead of just dropping it, if that kind of thing keeps happening, we can green card for that. Goalies after a goal need to return the ball to the official. If they're refusing to get the ball out of the cage or they're chucking it way up the field because they're angry, we can start green carding those kinds of things as a delay of game. Thankfully, that almost never happens. If a goalie is tossing the ball to an official and they miss and accidentally overshoot it, we're not talking about that kind of situation. We're talking about intentionally just chucking the ball way down the field because we're upset kind of stuff. Um, if a team just over and over and over again, quarter breaks, timeouts, doesn't come back to the field in a timely manner, we can call delay of game. Those kinds of things. If we're trying to set up the draw and we have players constantly moving, trying to reset, preventing us from setting up the draw, we can start carding for delay of game. So with a first offense, it's just a straight green card. The green cards in high school are a little different than college. So in college, they're a minute off the field. In high school, there's no time for a green card. We'll blow the whistle, we'll signal the timeout signal, we'll raise the green card. The ball will go over to the opposing team. But the player who got the green card does not have to leave the field. They're just going to move 4 away and off we go when we blow the whistle. The second time these things keep happening, when we've already done the green card, the official will signal timeout. They'll raise both a green card and a yellow card. When that happens, the offending player has to spend 2 minutes non-releasable in the penalty area. But the card doesn't count against her or the team. So it's not counted in that team card count when we're counting to see if a team has 4 or more cards. It doesn't count against the player. She's going to sit out for 2 minutes, but it doesn't count in the individual or team card count. The third time, and every time it happens after that, it's a timeout signal, a yellow card. The offending player spends 2 minutes in the penalty area, and the card does count for both the player and the team's card count. So if we have players that over and over and over again refuse to go behind or away after they've committed a foul, and we keep calling it, at some point, we're going to start yellow carding that. We're going to do green, green, yellow, and then just start yellow carding it all the time until the players learn, if I've committed a foul, I got to move away. I can't just rush right at a girl, that kind of thing. Okay. So when we're keeping our stats, some good things at the end of the game to just sort of make sure our stats look pretty good. However many shots you've tallied under shots and free position shots should be greater than or equal to the number of goals scored. Because we don't have any team, we've never had a team in the league that's so good that every single shot is a goal. So you will always have fewer shots than goals for the same team, always. You're always going to have more shots than goals. So that's the way it is. You will always have fewer assists than goals. Always. I mean, if we had a freak situation where every goal was an assisted goal, they'd be equal, but I've yet to see that happen, even with like really talented college or pro teams. Some goals will be assisted, some won't. So your assists will always be less than goals scored. Because we have 4 quarters, draws will typically be however many goals you have in the game. If you add up all the goals of both teams and add 4 for a draw at the start of each quarter, your draws that you've marked are typically equal to that number, total goals plus 4. Occasionally, though, a girl will be shooting and she'll score a goal and someone will foul her after that, and her team is awarded the ball without a draw. So occasionally your draws might be total goals plus 3 if something like that happened and we had a situation where we didn't do a draw because of a foul, that kind of thing. But in general, your draws will be total goals plus 4, unless one of those weird sort of situations happens. Um, Shots, the total shots against, so we're keeping track of shots against for our goalies. If we add up goals plus saves plus errant shots, that should equal the total number of shots against that you have tallied. Team A's caused turnovers should be less than turnovers for Team B. Team B's caused turnovers should be less than the number of turnovers Team A has, because not every turnover is caused. So pretty much every team will have more turnovers than we have caused turnovers for the other team. You want to look and make sure your goal count on the front sheet of your score sheet matches when you count up all the goals you've tallied by number and time on the back sheet. And same thing with assists. However many assists you've tallied on the front should match how many numbers you wrote for assists on the backside. Both teams, the card count should match. So if both teams have a scorekeeper at a game, you can kind of look at each other's sheets and make sure we all got the same cards for everybody. That should match. It's helpful if you're at the score table, like on quarter breaks, to talk to your counterparts from the other team and make sure everyone's got the same number of goals, the same number of cards, that kind of thing. Make sure everyone's on the same page. Um, Play will happen really fast. Sometimes girls are in a tight group and someone takes a shot and scores, and you don't know who scored the goal. Um, Ask the other team. They may have had a better view and seen who made the shot. Also, oftentimes, if it's the other team that scored the goal, a lot of times their score table knows their own players a little better and they can tell you who it was. If all else fails, you can always just call over quickly to the bench area of the team that scored the goal and say, hey, who shot that? Those girls on the sideline almost always know who took that shot, and they'll tell you, oh, that was number whatever, or that was so and so, and you can kind of get that tallied up on your sheet. So it's okay to kind of ask if you saw someone make a shot, you're not quite sure, because of your angle who it was, just ask, someone will know.
Devin, can you clarify on if you record if it's a green yellow card?
So you should keep track of it if for no other reason than yellow cards are going to start coming. But it does not count in the team or individual card count. So what you might want to do is just kind of mark a green yellow off on the side of your sheet, but you don't put it in that list with the yellow and red cards. So it's really more just to help you so you know to start expecting yellow cards. If we've gone down that route, odds are good yellow cards are coming soon so that you're ready for them.
And then another question that came in is, can you just clarify how offsides are administered if it's defensive versus offensive, and if green cards are ever issued for that?
So they can be. So it'll take a second when we're transitioning down the field for the trail official to count for offsides. Um, when we've counted, if the offense is offsides, we will call it right away and turn the ball over. So we'll blow the whistle, correct the offsides, turn the ball over to the other team, blow the whistle, restart play. If the defense is offsides, we may or may not call it right away. If you see an official standing near the restraining line with their arm straight up, one arm straight up above their head in a fist, it means a team is offsides. They know the defense is offsides. They are intentionally not calling it because it looks like the offense is on a scoring play. So we're going to wait a minute and see, can the offense get that shot off or not? If the offense gets the shot off and scores a goal, we count the goal and we don't worry about the offsides on the defense because the offense got a goal. So who cares? And then we just go back to a draw. If we're holding that offsides call and the offense shoots and misses, we're going to call the offsides now on the defense because they are offsides. We're going to correct that The offense is going to get the ball. We're going to restart. So it depends kind of on what happens, how we administer that, depending on the situation. If the defense is offsides and the offense isn't even trying to score, they're just passing the ball around, we'll call offsides, administer the penalty, move on. Where you can get a green card for offsides is if you have a team that keeps going offsides over and over and over again, then we're talking about repeated fouls where they're just failing to follow the rules in the same way over and over again. At that point, the officials can start the green, green, yellow, yellow for teams constantly going offsides. It doesn't happen too often because a team has to go offsides a lot usually before that'll happen. Um, so if it's an occasional offsides call, you usually won't see a card. But if you're at a game where the officials keep calling offsides over and over and over again, yeah, they might start carding. So it will happen. All right. So if you want to look for the NCAA guide that defines all these different stats and gives examples, you can go here and you can see the NCAA guide, which is a pretty good comprehensive guide defining all these things, and then a whole lot more you don't care about, but it's a pretty good guide for someone who wants something sort of extra. And then here we are going to look at some examples here so we can kind of look at some plays. So we're going to go through some game film and look and kind of talk about what we would mark for some of these plays. So here we have an ASU U of A game from a few years ago. So we're going to watch here. We have a player with the ball. She's coming in. She shoots. So there, it's a judgment call. In this case, I would mark the shooter for a shot. On the goalie side, I would mark shot against and I would mark save. Because if the goalie had not done what she did, that ball would have bounced into the goal cage. Now, here we have these players with the ball picking it up because it stays in bounds. Even though the shooter's teammate, that might actually be the shooter too if she turns and I see her number, but even if a player from the same team as the shooter comes away with the ground ball after a shot, we're going to give that player a ground ball because that ball never went out of bounds. She picked it up. So the girl who has the ball right now gets a tick mark for a ground ball. So that's that one. Now here we have a player takes a free position shot. So we're going to give the shooter a tick mark for free position. For the goalie, you have to kind of decide, would that shot have gone in or not? Was the shot high enough that it wouldn't have gone in? If you think the shot would have gone in, you're going to give the goalie a shot against and a save. If you think the shot would not have gone in, you're going to give the goalie a shot against and then a tick mark for an errant shot. So again, you really have to just kind of make your best judgment there. Now here we have, again, a player from the same team as the shooter picks up the ground ball in bounds. She's going to get a ground ball for that. So we're going to give number 12 a ground ball. So here we have a tournament game. We have a player who shoots and scores. So in that case, we're going to give the shooter a shot and a goal. On the goalie side, it's a shot against, goal against. So here, what's important to note, do not mark free position shot just because a girl lines up at the 8. because she may or may not take the shot. So in this case, we have 47 who had the ball, but opted to pass to a teammate instead of taking the shot. So we're always going to wait until the whistle blows and see what that player does. So there's no free position shot here because she chose to pass the ball. So now we have a player with the ball who shoots, but shoots off. So the player who shoots gets a shot, and for the goalie, it's shot against and errant. So here we have a shot that hits the pipe. So for the shooter, it's a shot. For the goalie, it's a shot against and errant. Now, the goalie is going to scoop up a ground ball in her goal circle. We're not going to count that as a ground ball. So here, that last play. We have a shooter who takes a shot. The officials signal shooting space. So we are not going to mark a shot for the shooter. That shooter gets awarded the ball on the 8-meter, and she may or may not shoot again. If she shoots on her 8-meter shot, we're going to mark her for a shot. But because the officials called shooting space, we're not marking a shot for her. So we're also not going to mark a shot against for the goalie, and we're not going to mark errant or save or goal because shooting space was called. So we're just not going to count anything from that previous play. So here, there is no way on earth. We have a player who was passing. She wasn't even trying to shoot. And the goalie has intercepted that ball. So it is not a save. It's not a shot. It's not a save. The girl who made the pass, you have to decide, did she make a bad pass? Or was the girl she was passing to not paying attention and screwed up? Whichever one of them you think is responsible for that turnover, you're going to mark them with a turnover. The goalie who intercepted the ball is going to get a credit for a caused turnover and a ground ball. But it's not a save because that was a pass from behind the cage. It was never going to go in the goal. But we still want to reward the goalie for her play. So she's getting caused turnover, ground ball. So here, you have to decide, was that dark player trying to shoot or trying to pass? And you're either going to give her a shot or a turnover, depending on whether or not you think it was a shot or a pass. The player in white who picked up the ground ball is going to get the ground ball. Now, she dumps it to her goalie, who's going to pick it up off the ground, but only one of them gets a ground ball, and it'll be that first girl, that field player that picked up the ball and batted it to her goalie. So here, again, you can see off on the right, the official is signaling shooting space. So we're not going to mark a shot for that dark player who took the shot. We're going to wait and see if she shoots on her 8-meter free position. Although with that shot, there's a possibility a yellow card is coming for dangerous propel after that, but we'd have to wait and see. It looks like not in this case.
Hey, Devin, might be good too if you can just talk a little bit about what shooting space is and a 3-second rule.
Okay, so for shooting space, a couple of things. Shooting space is basically that triangle, but it's not a triangle from the goal posts to the shooter, that's kind of the common misconception, and that if anyone gets in the way there, it's shooting space. Shooting space is actually from the outside of the goal circle on each side, forming a triangle to the ball. So not to the ball carrier, to where she is holding her stick with the ball. So from that ball, we make a triangle to the outside of the goal circle on each side. That's shooting space. As officials, we're only going to call it if there is a defender in that space who is not marked up and was not drawn into shooting space that is preventing the player from shooting who otherwise would have had an opportunity to shoot. So if we have a defender camping out in what would be shooting space, but there's also an offensive player 5 feet away camping out in that same space, we're not calling shooting space on the defender. Because even if she wasn't there, the other team can't shoot because their own player's in the way. If we have a situation where we have a team that's just passing the ball back and forth and no one's even trying to shoot, it's not shooting space. If a player is double teamed and doesn't have her hands free and couldn't safely shoot, and there's someone standing in that area, it's not shooting space. So the player with the ball has to have the opportunity to shoot. She's got to be looking to shoot. She has to be free to shoot, and she'd be able to shoot except for this defender standing in her way. But if we're marked up, if there are girls from the shooter's own team blocking the goal, it's not shooting space. For 3 seconds, it's a little different between high school and college. So for college, a player, a defender, has to be within an arm and stick's length of her opponent to be considered marked up. In high school, it's a stick's length. So if defenders want to be in the 8 meter for 3 or more seconds, they need to be marked up, which means they need to be within a stick's length of their opponent. And that's the stick hip to hip. So imagine if you put the butt end of the stick on your hip, wherever the head is of that stick, there needs to be a player somewhere in that space for her to be considered marked up. If there isn't, and she's hanging out in the 8 for more than 3 seconds, we'll call 3 seconds because players can't just kind of hang out there blocking up the space. But if a player's kind of hanging out there not marked up for 2 seconds, and then they mark up, and then later they're out there not marked up again, the count starts again. So we don't resume the count from before, we start a new count. So it's to keep the defenders from kind of camping in that space, blocking it up, because we don't want the offense to come in and try and shoot right next to a girl and accidentally hit her. So hopefully that sort of clarifies it a little bit. There is actually a free video on USA Lacrosse where they use ropes and everything to show how shooting space changes as players move. So if anyone really kind of wants to see that, it's a pretty good quick video that shows shooting space. Okay. So here we have lots of stuff happening, but we have to decide with player number 7, dark player number 7, did she lose the ball on her own, or did the other team do enough to check the ball out? So we're deciding if we have a turnover and a cause turnover or just a turnover. In this case, number 7 lost the ball. She never shot. So we're not going to mark a shot down, which means there's no shot against the goalie. So no save for the goalie because there's no shot. Here we have the white team coming around. So what we're going to have here, you're going to see the officials communicating with one another. So in this case, we have one official seeing the defense committing a foul with a stick in the sphere, and the other official sees a charge where the offense displaced a defender when she was rolling the cage. So here they're going to do alternate possession. when there's alternate possession, basically we have both teams committed a foul. But if the officials award the ball to the white team, if white has alternate possession, we're not marking anything. If the dark team has alternate possession and the officials award the dark team the ball, we're going to give white 12 a turnover for losing the ball on a charge. So it'll depend on how the officials manage that with alternate possession. So in this case, they give it to the dark team, so we would mark a turnover for white. So here we have a draw. So in this case, the two girls that took the draw get the draw taken tick mark. And then you have to decide on this play, did 40 in orange intentionally tap the ball after she took the draw to her teammate? And if she did, you're going to give 40 the draw control. If you think it was all 11 who came away with the ball, orange 11, you're going to give her the draw control. Then 11's going to continue on. So here we're going to give 11 the assist, and the girl she passed to is going to get a shot and a goal. And for the goalie, it's a shot against, goal against. So we have another draw. So here we have the white 9 took the draw, and so did orange 40, and then we have white 11 gets the draw control. So here again, orange 40 and white 9 take the draw, orange 11 gets the draw control. Orange 11 will also get a...
You're not coming through.
Oh, well, I don't know why. Huh. Okay. Okay. So here we have another draw. So there, the official's going to signal a redraw, so we're not going to mark anyone for draw taken or draw control. We're going to wait for the redraw. So here we have a bad pass. We have the white player comes and picks up the ground ball. She's going to get that ground ball. She passes it. We're going to see how long her teammate runs. So that is an assist. Even though the white teammate who caught the pass ran quite a distance before she shot, she didn't have to evade any defenders. So the player who picked up the ball gets a ground ball and an assist, and the player who caught the ball gets a shot and a goal. Goalie is shot against, goal against. So here you have to decide, are we doing a shot and a goal and a shot against, goal against on the goalie, or was there an assist there? You're going to have to use your best judgment. So here, no assist. We're going to have a shot and a goal for 62, shot against, goal against for the goalie, but the girl who passed to 62 does not get an assist because 62 had to stop and had to work to evade the defenders before she could shoot. So here we've got a shot, it hits the pipe and bounces out. So it's going to be a shot for the shooter. It's going to be a shot against errant for the goalie. And then the white player who comes away with this ball gets the ground ball. And so here we have a number of things will happen. So the first shooter gets a shot. The goalie gets a shot against and a save. The second white player who picks up the ball gets a ground ball and a shot and a goal, and the goalie gets a shot against and a goal against. So sometimes it'll happen that fast. So here, the player who got her stick in the way gets the cause turnover. Her teammate who picked up the ball gets the ground ball. The player who lost the ball on the pass gets a turnover. So here, 11 orange gets the cause turnover. The white player gets the turnover. The other orange player, looks like number 9, she gets the ground ball. So here we're going to have 2 players form a double team. One of them checks. She gets the cause turnover. Her teammate picks up the ball. Her teammate gets the ground ball. Their opponent gets a turnover.
Hey, Devin.
Uh-huh.
I'll wait for you to pause. Question came through on if there's a draw foul and a team goes early, so like a false start,
Yep.
do you award the other team a draw win?
Yes. Yes. And they're typically, because if white and black are taking the draw and the white team draws illegally, you'll usually just give the draw control to the black team player who took the draw. So here we have a player who checked the ball and eventually comes up with it. So she's going to get a cause turnover and a ground ball. So here we have an interception. So the player who intercepted the pass gets a cause turnover and a ground ball. And you have to decide if the girl who passed or the girl who should have caught gets the turnover. On that last one we saw multiple girls double and then triple teamed the ball carrier. The player who checked the ball out gets a cause turnover. The player who lost the ball gets a turnover. Because the ball was checked out of bounds, no one gets a ground ball on that one. So here, the white player lost the ball on her own. So she's going to get a turnover, and the black player who picked up the ball gets a ground ball. There's no cause turnover. The white player just couldn't quite bring the ball in on her own. So here, the officials have called an illegal pick on number 47. So the black team will be awarded the ball, but because the officials awarded it on a foul, we're not giving anyone a ground ball. Even though 12 had the ball when her team lost it, we're not going to give number 12 a turnover. 12 did not lose the ball or commit any foul. We're going to give the turnover to white 47, who got called for the illegal pick, because that's the reason the ball turned over.
Yeah, Devin, that might be a good one to expand on a little bit on what the definition of an illegal pick is versus a moving pick.
Okay, so the pick rules in women's lacrosse and girls lacrosse is a little bit different than men's and boys lacrosse. It's different than basketball. So in girls lacrosse, moving picks are legal. So in girls lacrosse, if the player setting the pick allows enough time and space for her opponent to stop and change direction, the pick is legal, whether it's moving or stationary. But if a player sets a pick without allowing enough time or space for her opponent to react and contact happens, it's an illegal pick. So it can be moving or stationary and still be legal. The question is, did the girl setting the pick allow enough time and space for her opponent to respond? And if she doesn't, and her opponent runs into her, and that contact happens, then it's an illegal pick. So in general, don't set blind picks, is kind of the rule there. But as long as there's enough time or room, a pick can be moving or stationary. So here we have a pass, we have a few passes, but no stats there. Just a team picking up a ground ball, making some passes. We're not giving anyone any stats for that. They're just moving the ball down the field. So here we have the dark team with the ball. So she gets called for a goal circle violation because she stepped on the goal circle. So what's going to happen is the dark player who stepped on the goal circle is going to get a turnover. Now, because she stepped on the goal circle, the goalie just gets awarded the ball. We're not giving the goalie a cause turnover. She didn't do anything to make that happen. So she's not getting a cause turnover. She's not getting a ground ball. The officials have just awarded her the ball. So here we have the dark team with the ball again. So, oops, we had kind of a pass and catch situation that didn't work out. Same thing, you have to decide which of the dark players is at fault for the loss of the ball. And that's who you give the turnover to. There's no cause turnover because no one from the other team made them mess up. So now we're going to give a ground ball to the white player who comes up with the ball. So she's fouled and the official signaled and she keeps going. And she's fouled again, she keeps going. Now she loses the ball on her own. She goes to pick it up and she's hit from behind. So here we're going to mark the dark player. She gets a red card. So we're going to mark the card for the dark player and she's going to get a red card. Now in this case, the player that got hit was injured. A teammate comes in to take the ball. No one gets a ground ball or anything else. We're just marking the card on the dark player that hit her from behind. So here, white team has the ball. She's sort of trying to evade a defender. She lost the ball. So you have to decide, did the defense do enough to make her lose the ball or did she lose it on her own? So either way, she's going to get what the white player gets a turnover, and you have to decide, do any of the dark players also get a cause turnover? Whether there's a cause turnover or not, the dark player here now who has the ball gets a ground ball. Now she's lost the ball, and we have to wait and see. So the officials called a foul, so her team, she gets the ball back again. We're not giving her a ground ball again. And she's got to come back. And here we had a situation where right at the end there, the officials had to stop play and make that player go back to the spot of the foul because she was trying to start from way too far away. It's those kinds of things, if they happen over and over and over again, you'll see officials start green carding for a delay of game. But that's all the clips we have as kind of an example. You can see from the film, a lot of times this goes really fast. So if you're the spotter, scorekeeper, just do the best you can. Catch as much as you can see. And if you miss a turnover or you miss a cause turnover or you miss a ground ball, it's not a big deal. We just need to make sure the goals are correct, cards are correct, and if you accidentally miss an assist, we'll all survive. It's not the end of the world. Just do the best you can. So any questions, Chris, showing up?
Nothing's showing up, but yeah, if anyone has any, feel free to unmute or type them in. It's a lot of information.
It is for all the games, the officials before the game will come up to the score table and they'll talk to you to make sure everyone's comfortable with their job. We'll make sure you know what the length of halftime is that the coaches agreed on. We'll make sure you know who has alternate possession after the coin toss, that kind of thing. So if you have any questions, just ask. The officials will kind of help you figure out what you need to be doing. It's not a big deal. Occasionally on some of those like electronic scoreboards, the official blows the whistle and you hit the button and 10 seconds later you realize you didn't hit the button hard enough and the clock didn't start. Don't panic, just hit the button, make sure the clock starts. It'll be fine. you know, the officials aren't going to be yelling at you from the field, berating you if you accidentally miss something. We'll just work with you to fix it and it'll be fine. So especially the first few games, um, we kind of expect that there'll be a lot of new scorekeepers, and so the officials will be happy to work with you to make sure you know if we're running clock or stop clock, what kind of signals to look out for. So if you're ever not sure before a game, just ask the officials and we'll help you out. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we will end the presentation. But if anyone has questions later, you can always just send a quick email to the Arizona Girls Lacrosse officials at gmail.com. Um, and it's just like it sounds, Arizona Girls Lacrosse officials, all kind of one long word at gmail.com. Just if you have a question, just send it and we can kind of get back to you if you're not sure on a
Oh,
scorekeeping
looks like
thing.
there was one question that I
Okay.
missed. It's a question about alternate possession,
Okay.
but I don't see it. Let me see if I can find it. Or maybe somebody can just shout it out. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing it in the chat here. If somebody wants to ask, I'll just add too that if you for folks that oh, okay. Uh, just I'll make a quick comment and then I see the question here, Devin. Just for everyone to be aware, the recording for this will be available on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/South Mountain Lacrosse. So feel free to watch it back since I know Devin covered a lot of information. And if there's anyone else on your team that wants to be a scorekeeper this season, they can watch the replay as well. And then Devin, the question is if you can please give some examples of alternate possession in high school.
So in high school, the most common alternate possession will be something like we have an offensive player with the ball heading to goal. She runs into her defender and displaces her, which is a charge. And instead of just taking the hit, the defender responds by shoving her back with like a push or a cross check. So we'll have alternate possession because we'll have a charge call against the offense and a push or illegal stick to body contact against the defense, in which case we'll do alternate possession. In high school, anytime alternate possession occurs in the critical scoring area, alternate possession is administered at the dot. So whichever team gets the ball, it's going to the dot. It's a whistle start. The other most common alternate possession in high school is honestly shooting space and dangerous propel. Because what'll happen is we'll have a player running in to shoot. Someone's in shooting space. The official is raising the whistle to call shooting space. The offensive player shoots anyway and hits or nearly hits her opponent with the ball. So what we have is we have shooting space on the defense and we have a dangerous propel on the offense. In that case, though, they're offsetting fouls, but we won't do alternate possession because one of those fouls is a card. So we will administer the card and the other team will get the ball.
Okay.
It used to be just straight up alternate possession, but a couple years ago, USA Lacrosse changed that. So now, anytime there are offsetting fouls, if one of them is a cardable foul, the team that committed the other foul gets the ball.
And there's a couple more questions that came in.
Okay.
One was more of a request, but if you're at the end of a quarter and there's an 8 meter called with a free position shot, are the refs able to remind the players, the shooter, that they cannot take a step when shooting?
So officials do not coach. So we will set up the 8 meter free position and we will blow the whistle, but we don't tell players if they can or can't step, if they can or can't pass. That's kind of a coaching thing. Now, in varsity, it shouldn't be too much of an issue in that with varsity, as long as there's not a 10 goal differential and we're not on a running clock, The 8 meter means there was a foul in the CSA, so the clock has stopped and it won't restart until the whistle. So a player probably does have time to take a step before they shoot. They might not, but the officials, we can't tell them because that's a coaching thing, not an officiating thing. Um, JV on a running clock, we might have a situation where the player goes to, she takes a couple steps and the clock's run out. Yeah, the officials don't coach.
Okay. And actually related to that, there is a question about JV running clock. The question is whether or not we addressed it earlier, which we did. So you can definitely watch that back on the recording. And it was just a comment, Devin, that last year there was some confusion with the officials on stopping the clock, as you outlined here in the scorekeeper training for a JV running clock.
Yes, there was some confusion last year. So hopefully we will make sure it is all cleared up. So for JV will mostly be a running clock. We're typically only stopping for official timeouts, so cards, injuries, those kinds of things. Um, but yeah,
Okay.
JV is mostly a running clock with very few stoppages.
And the last one here is a request if you could just recap one more time the main changes for the rules this year.
Oh, yeah, let me put it up real quick. Here, let me just pop it right up here. So the 2026 rule changes, the rule book clarifies when coaches can request a stick change. Stick request, a stick check. The What has not changed is coaches still have to request the check by player number, not name. It's player number. Um, so that's changed a little bit. Coaches will want to look and see when they can and can't request a stick check. And then on-field players may not wear audio or video device during the game. Um, the only exception to that currently is if there's a player with a hearing impairment who has a prescribed hearing aid, that would be considered a medical device, not audio or video equipment, so it would be allowed. Um, so in the past, if the goalie had the ball in the goal circle when her team called a timeout, when we came back, the goalie would have the ball in the goal circle and we would just resume the count. The new rule is if a team calls a timeout when the goalie has the ball in the goal circle, when we come back, any player from her team can take the ball and restart play at the dot. It will still be a whistle start, but any of her teammates or the goalie herself can take the ball at the dot. Now with an illegal draw, instead of the center who did not commit the foul on the draw having to take the ball to restart it, she or any of her teammates can just pick up the ball and start. So that's changed a little bit to kind of speed things up. So if there's an illegal draw and a player on the circle from the opposing team is closer to the ball than the girl who took the draw, that girl can just run and pick up the ball and go if she wants to. And then goal circle fouls, instead of the player who committed the goal circle foul having to go all the way 4 meters behind the goal circle, she now only has to move 4 meters away from the goal circle. So we can just speed up play faster. So those are the rule changes for 2026.
Great. All right. I think that is all of the questions.
Okay. All right then. If anyone thinks of questions later, just drop us a line and let us know.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.